Hello, my amazing people. I greet you according to your time. If it is your first time and you like what we are doing here, kindly subscribe, put on your notification bell to all notification. It's very, very important because it will enable you to know when we upload a new video. Here we react to all forms of videos, we educate, we inform the members of the public about what is happening. And to you, YouTube, I appreciate you for creating this wonderful platform that we are using to disseminate information. At the same time, I put a disclaimer that here in Linda's TV show, we do not promote violence, we do not promote hate speech, we do not promote misleading information. Rather, we are here to educate, inform the members of the public, and also to remind you too that a call for self-determination is never a call for war. Every country in the world have this.
Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Yes, indeed, we're joined this morning by Senator Abdulaziz Musa Yaradua, who is the Chairman, Senate Committee on Army. He is also the Chairman, Northern Senators Forum. Good morning, Senator. Good to see you again.
Good morning, Chamberlain.
Well, yesterday, the Senate did have this conversation about security. They raised different concerns, almost tantamount to what quite a number of people have been trying to wrap their heads around in terms of what our approach is as a country. Why is there no solution? Why does it happen again? So if you could start with giving us the mindset of some of the senators, because they did make some recommendations. But what are the key challenges that they identified in the Senate?
Thank you very much. The motion of yesterday basically was to review, the security approaches of to address the banditry attacks, especially in the Northwest, the North Central, and the FCT and other, states that have insecurity. Basically, to my mind, the issue of state police, I think, is what is at stake there.
Okay.
Because, it is very important to recognize that the governors need to play a more important role now, in the security architecture. And I wouldn't call it that, but I would say reforms are needed now, which I think the federal government has started already in terms of reforming the police. You are aware that over 10,000 had been now recruited. The list is out, and more needs to be done. So I think the issue basically is some of the senators are thinking a state of emergency needs to be in place, which I think it's already in place, because the president, in his wisdom, had declared a state of emergency on food security. And once you declare a state of emergency on food security, by extension, you are declaring state of emergency on security, because you cannot have food security without security. And I think the wisdom of the president is not to put the country on the line, because once you declare state of emergency on security, then by extension you are beginning to scare investors away from this country. So I think in his wisdom he decided to declare state of emergency on food security. And other concerns, is the way the security agencies are collaborating. And I think there is a very serious improvement in that aspect. I was here the last time, and I did tell you that personally I brought a motion on the need for them to improve in their synergy, which we can now see the improvements. If you look at what the security agencies are doing right now, one of their strategy is to take out the leaders of these bandits, and they've been succeeding. Dogo Gede is no more alive, Dangote is no more alive, somebody, Jambrosiello, so many of them have been taken out. And the essence is, since they are not an organized force, when you take out the leaders, tendency is that, you have the rest, in a state of confusion. And that is what we're having. And what I think I see playing out now in terms of the security is, the operations being conducted by the military and other security agencies. What we are seeing is a reaction by the bandits, going after soft targets, just coming to kill 20, 30 people so that they show that they are still there. But we know from what the operations that are ongoing with the security, a lot has been achieved. And there's a lot of relative security so far.
So, but for that, for the matter to come up again in the Senate, it does suggest that something still needs to be done, that there's a gap somewhere that needs to be plugged, because it's of huge concern to the senators.
Yes, you know, security is a continuous process. It's not something that you can achieve in a day. And Mr. President has done very well when you look at how he started right from the beginning. The first thing he did, you know, was to bring a supplementary budget, which majorly was to ensure that the gap of, you know, equipment, other facilities needed by the security agencies and the armed forces, you know, are given to them so that they can work. And that is why we are seeing the successes we are seeing today. The supplementary budget has done a lot, and he has given more money to the security in the 2024 budget. You are aware of that. So he is doing, and if for anybody who wants to be objective about what Mr. President is doing, if you go back to his renewed hope agenda on security, he has talked about, you know, the need to, you know, tinker with the policy and the doctrine of the security agencies. And a lot of work is ongoing along that direction.
So does it mean that those senators who raised those concerns were not being objective?
No, they were objective. I'm not saying they are not objective. What I'm saying is that, you know, everybody talks in respect of what he has seen in his senatorial zone. Mm-hmm. But Nigeria is a large country. You are talking of 36 states and the FCT. You are talking of over 220 million citizens of this country. And you and I know, of course, we have this security gaps, which this government is battling to, you know, to take care of. So it's not as if nothing is being done. Of course, concerns are there, but the government is doing a lot to help in ensuring that security is...
We've had some of the Chief of Army Staff and some of his team members, they've spoken about what they're doing. Of course, something is being done, but I don't know how the government gets their feedback, because, I mean, it was just yesterday, several people were just telling us that behind the scenes, though, some farmers who were attacked by some of these terrorists and insurgents, some of them left the country. So that's where some think that there is a gap somewhere that needs to be plugged, because when the military goes in and does its job and then move on, there has to be that capacity on the part of either the police to step in and fill the gap. But we don't seem to have that yet.
Yes, first of all, you are aware the military is basically doing police job right now. And this government is doing everything possible to reform the Nigerian police force. I've just told you about the 10,000 recruits that are going to be recruited. And I'm aware that one of the things that will be revived, hopefully in the police, is the mobile police, because that is supposed to be the stopgap between the military, you know, and the police. If you look at the state of the mobile police today, they are just not there. So I believe this government is doing everything possible to ensure that the mobile police force is back, and then they do everything possible to ensure even the deployment of those that are going to be trained now is done in such a way that, you know, people are taken back to their constituencies. Because what is important is to try and nip, you know, any security challenge in the bud.
Are we going to try and change their training manual or curriculum such that counterterrorism is embedded in their functions now, so they do a lot less of civilian functions and make sure they focus on some of these insurgents and dealing with them directly?
No, I think the Inspector General of Police is already handling that. The issue of the counterterrorism cannot be handled by the regular police. It has to be special forces, and he has already established the special forces. But what needs to be done is to have more of the special forces in the states. They are the ones that have the special training, you know, to deal with the terrorism and other banditry issues, especially kidnapping, rescue of those victims that have been kidnapped, and so on. So along that line, I know the Inspector General of Police is doing something to revive, you know, the special forces that will deal with such challenges.
I want you to be able to look at some of the details, especially when it comes to Northern Nigeria. You are chair of the Northern Senators. And listen to Senator Ningi, there's a lot that has happened and are still happening. One of the most troubling of them is this bandit negotiation business that we've heard going on right now. You mentioned a few bandits who have been extinguished. But the truth is, with the extinguishing of someone like Dangote, another person comes up. Many of these bandits see it as an opportunity to rise up the ranks. And the absolute end of this is not yet known. We've heard senators on this program talk about how we're negotiating with some of the people in our neighborhoods so that we can live in peace. Is this something that you would want incorporated into the security architecture that is being examined in ending this problem in the north?
Well, I think the issue of ransom payment has been dealt with by this government, because the government has already banned, giving ransom to bandits. But, citizens sometimes, become apprehensive, especially if your loved one, has been abducted. You try to, find a way. But I think it's important for citizens to know that security is everybody's business. And as such, the government must be given the opportunity to be in the forefront of dealing with it, and not for individuals to take it upon themselves to because the moment you continue to pay ransom, you're just fueling them, you're just making them to continue with what they are doing, because this money they used it to buy weapons, to buy ammunition. These are the things they use it so and to also fuel their criminal activities. So I think it is important for Nigerians to understand the need to stop, paying ransom when their loved ones, have been abducted. And like I mentioned, the role of the governors in this reform is very, very important. And you can see some of them are committed to ending the insecurity by, establishing certain community police, call them vigilante or whatever. But what is important is we all know that, conversations are on in regards to the state police. We believe it is very important to have another layer of security that will help the federal police in ensuring security. And of course, the fears of some people is how this state police are going to be used. I believe if safeguards are put in place to ensure, a sort of distinction between the kind of crimes that the state police can handle and other complex crimes that will be, given to the federal police with synergy among the two forces, I think it will work out.
Another thing that was mentioned at yesterday's conversation in the Senate was timelines to heads of security agencies. Categorically heard the senator say, if you don't do your job in the time that you are allotted, then you would lose your job. If you knew that you were going to lose your job, you would make sure that you meet your target. What do you make of that request?
Well, yes, timeline is good because it helps in ensuring what is supposed to be achieved. But sometimes it does not work. For example, a chief of army staff or air staff or any head of security agency may have, purchased certain, made procurements of certain equipment. Some of this heavy equipment are not sold on the shelf. You have to wait for them to be manufactured, for them to be brought into the country. It takes time. So if sometimes we give timelines when certain requirements of the security agencies are not met, that timeline may not be met. You remember the Tucano helicopters. How many years did it take for them to be in Nigeria here? Assuming you give timeline at that time to the security agencies like the chief of army staff who wanted to use them, how do you want him to achieve and ensure the timeline? Yes, timelines are good to give, but when the armed forces and the security agencies have all that they require to fight the battle. So I think it's important to understand, where we are coming from.
One of the issues this is also raised is the issue of local government autonomy. These banditry and all of these forms of insecurity, they happen at local levels. And many people from local authorities have argued that because the local governments are handicapped, the ability for them to be more proactive when it comes to, handling security situations, identifying security threats at local levels, that handicap has made them in such a way that, they just basically watch it happen, and then things get worse, and then we start to call on the government for help. Is the Senate in any way going to use this as an opportunity to push for better autonomy for local governments, especially financial autonomy?
I think the Senate is already doing that, and I believe the 9th Senate had also done that, because a bill was passed. Unfortunately, when it was sent to the various state governments, it did not see the light of the day. And I believe the committee of the 10th Senate on the Constitution, headed by the Deputy President of the Senate, will do the needful in respect of ensuring the autonomy of the local governments. And I tell you that it's very important, like you said, crimes emanate right from at the local level. So the layers of security we have today are just not enough. To me, I believe we should even have local government police. If you look at the United States, they have almost 5 to 6 layers of security within, a local government, which they call a county. You have the sheriff, which is the actual security for the local governments. You have the state police, the presence of the state police. You have the secret police. You have the, the national police. And you also have the FBI. So you can see the level of security. And that is why if anything happens, within minutes, you see the synergy and the reaction, the proactiveness of dealing with that particular, situation. So that is what we need to have. And that is why these bandits, always have their day. They go to a local government where you just have basically not more than 20 policemen. And these 20 policemen are stationed at the local government headquarters. They are not even in the wards,
So that means that, this debate about state police is something you subscribe to, but we need to organize it properly so that it gets to the grassroots and then moving forward.
Exactly.
But what would you say to those narratives, those who always say that, some states cannot fund it, so how do they cope?
Well, I think they can. If they do their best, to generate their internally generated revenue, because most of the states, you see, rely on the allocation by the federal government, and if they take a cue with like Lagos State, I think they will do well, because right now some of the states are funding the community police that they have established. They are funding them, so I believe they can do it.
But do you see that at some point in the history of this country, we might have to come back to that conversation about resources, natural resources in different states? If they keep complaining they don't have resources, they're relying on what comes from the center, they have resources in their states, they can't do anything. At some point, we may have to come back to that conversation and say, okay, you know what? Let's see what they can do about that. As it was, we had it before. They just pay royalties to the center. So don't you think that we should be gearing up to perhaps have a conversation on that in that regard?
Yeah, why not? It's something that can be done, and it has been done before. So I think we can have such a conversation in the future, and certain modalities could be put in place for those states, that cannot measure up to what they can get. The federal government can assist them, because that was what was happening even during the regions. Those regions that do not have the revenue that will manage the budget they have, some money is taken from another region and given to them at the center. So I think that can be done, and if that is done, it will help in ensuring that states become more prudent, in taking care and managing their resources.
Allow me to even bring us to the question of even celebrating whatever wins we have made. It would seem like the only time we talk about insecurity is when we receive the kind of news that we have on the front page of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. Very, very jarring information of people being killed, particularly security operatives and all of that. But let's begin with whatever wins you think we may have had in recent time. Are there any wins in our security architecture to celebrate? What have we achieved within the past, in recent time? What would you say we can celebrate? Is there anything to celebrate?
I think we have achieved a lot. If you go to the south today and southeast, you can see there's a lot of quiet now as to the activities of IPO. And down in the northwest too, these incidents of killings, I think, have been reduced to the minimum level, unlike what happens on daily basis, especially in Zamfara, Kebbi, Katsina State. So a lot has been done. Like I mentioned, most of these leaders of the bandits have been eliminated, and more will be eliminated. And operations, as I'm talking to you, are ongoing by the military to ensure that they are rooted out. So I think there is a lot of improvement in the security. And also, like I mentioned, the governors are doing their best. They are committed to ensuring that, the insecurity is dealt with completely. And I know the effort that the National Security Advisor is making in respect of, bringing all stakeholders to further discuss on the blueprint, that has been brought before the government, so that completely we deal with this situation of insecurity. So I think very soon we are going to have a national discussion on these security issues, bringing all the stakeholders together, including the governors, so that we have, a roadmap as to how it can be dealt with.
One other thing that comes to mind right now is what one can consider safe margin, Senator. When we receive news that policemen are killed, soldiers are killed, anyone in our security apparatus are killed, it is very, very disturbing. And then we also hear from time to time that these bandits or criminals, whatever name we want to call them, they attack soft targets. But anytime there is a death of any Nigerian, it is so disturbing, it is natural for Nigerians to call out the government, be it federal or state. But then what would you consider a safe margin in terms of our security or insecurity? We know, it's said all over the world that we can't completely wipe out insecurity. We can't put a complete stop to it. What would you consider a safe margin? And we can say, okay, within this particular margin, it is still something that we can call a safe margin of error.
Well, I think that is very difficult for one to determine, because security situation is fluid and dynamic. You never can know when and where it can take place. So it is difficult to say. But however, what I will call on Nigerians to do, is to support our armed forces and the security agencies for what they are doing. How do they support them? Is by ensuring that they pass information to them that could help them in, dealing with certain security situations. And this support should be, all-encompassing, because this security is the business of everybody. So I think it's very difficult for one to say this is a safe margin, because as I'm talking to you now, anything can happen anywhere. But what is important, I think, is the reforms that the federal government is engaging in now, the government should be given all the support required in order to ensure, especially our police force is being reformed properly. They are being, kitted and given the right equipment to work, as well as, recruit more, police to ensure that our states, our local governments, and the wards are safe.
Well, Senator, two things come to mind right now. Number one is the issue of intelligence gathering. Number two is that of protection. When people, we have heard in this country, I'm sure you're aware, that people give information to security agencies and there is a reprisal from the criminals. So how do people ensure, especially where they have been vulnerable before, that we give this kind of support you're asking for in a way that there would be no reprisal on them? How do we ensure their protection? And then secondly, even before these things happen, we understand that there is supposed to be some intelligence gathering. We understand that DSS operatives are in every local government in this country. If these things suddenly happen on us, what would you say is the reason that that would happen when we're supposed to be ahead of it via intelligence gathering?
Well, like I did say, you see, one of the challenges the security agencies are having is that of informers who have decided to be on the part, of the bandits. And this is the very serious, challenge that the security agencies are having. There was a time in my state when certain informers were kept around the airport. Anytime the Air Force takes off to go to the bandits' den, these informers immediately call them to alert them, and they take positions. So I think the major challenge lies in those that give information, to the bandits. And like I said, most of these local villages are not properly protected. So of course, some of them, will have that fear of, reprisal by the bandits, especially, when the security agencies leave the place. But I think by and large, we should try as Nigerians to take that fear out of us, because this is something that concerns all of us. And we have to do everything possible, to ensure that we take these bandits out. And I believe by God's grace, this will be done with the effort that the federal government is making.
It would seem like there is some kind of, I don't know how to put it, well, some understanding from your side, from your end, about how the governors are performing. But then these insecurity issues happen in their states, and people call on the federal government. Even the Senate is calling on the federal government. Is that to say that the states are helpless? You've also talked about the issue of state police that, it's a conversation that needs to be had now. I mean, that conversation has been going on forever. But then we also know that there are states, I'm sure you're aware, who come up with their own security councils, and they bring in everyone that has anything to do in terms of that, and ensure that no such insecurity happen in their states. So, is it right now, are you saying that there is very little or nothing the governors, particularly in the states that seem to have these recurrent issues of insecurity, do to forestall the occurrences? After all, they receive security reports.
Well, like I said, the governors are doing their best. You should know that the armed forces and the police belong to the federal government. In that regard, the governors can do but very little. And they, of course, do get very fantastic cooperation from the security agencies anytime they call upon them. So that is why I said it is important to understand the reform that needs to be, widened to ensure that the governors play, a more important role in the security of their states. And by extension, having their own police force, that can, augment what the federal police is doing, so that the more, because we need more security, both at the state level, at the local government levels. And with the number of police, federal police that we have today, we all agree and we know that there's no way they can police this nation. And that is why, like I mentioned, the recruitment that has just been done of 10,000 policemen, more needs to be done, especially if we have mobile police in every state, maybe 3,000 per state, so that each senatorial zone gets at least 1,000 mobile policemen, to ensure that, more policing is done. And this will relieve the armed forces so that they go back to their, primary role of defending this nation. As I'm talking to you today, the army is operating in the whole 36 states of the Federation, plus the FCT. So they are overstretched. If, God forbid, we have any situation, international, crisis, I don't know how we're going to handle that. So it's very important. The reform of the police needs to be done as quickly as possible so that they can take over from the military, for the military to go back, and continue with their duties.
Have you been thinking about the laws and procedures to ensure that, because eventually when this happens, some say it will eventually happen, it's a question of time, abuse on the part, because you have said time and again, the government needs to do a little bit more, but that concern is also out there. What measures are we putting in place to ensure that we don't have it out of control, such that citizens will begin to protest in one form or one way or the other?
Yeah, that's why I say safeguards need to be put in place. One is, the type of crimes that the state police can handle. They should be given, that policing rule within the community, so that if anything happens immediately, crime is detected, it is treated immediately before it becomes something big. So certain simple crimes could be given as the role of the state police, while complex crimes, are handled by the federal police.
I mean, we keep talking about the army, the police, but there's the non-kinetic issue, poverty, the endemic poverty in many of these parts of the country. That's something that the senators can actually be a part of the solution to, in collaboration with state governors, of course. But how are you going to, because you are chair of these senators from the north, what measures do you think can be put in place by your group to alleviate the poverty levels there? Because the root cause of all of this, as many people have noted, is endemic poverty in the north. How do you handle this?
I think the federal government is doing a lot in that regard. There is this social intervention that has been ongoing, and if you ask, you will hear from people, they've been getting alerts. The government is doing enough in that regard. We as senators, our role is to ensure that, yes, we take the challenges of the people to the Senate and ensure that things are done to alleviate their suffering. And this has been taken. If you remember last year, we passed, we gave the president an approval of 500 billion in order to alleviate the suffering, of especially the issue of the fuel subsidy that has brought about inflation and so many other things that people are, battling with. So I think with what the federal government is doing in terms of social intervention, with time, you see, it's not something you can do, within a day. These are things that have happened over a long period of time. So when governments come with, good intention, most importantly is to look at what the government is doing. And this government of President Ahmed Bola Tinubu is doing enough. Even the students have been, there's student loan that is ongoing. So many things are being done to ensure, that the suffering of people is being alleviated.
But Senator, many people will argue that palliatives do not lift people out of poverty. Palliatives may cushion the effect of a policy that may be harmful to you in the interim. But a long-term solution to a poverty that is endemic and, like you said, has been there for so many years, Do you think palliatives are going to be able to handle that?
Well, it's not only the palliatives that the government is, handling. There are other economic policies that are in place now, which basically, will not bear fruit as quickly as we think they should. But we believe, an enabling environment is being provided by the federal government, to ensure that, people get jobs, and then there are other empowerment, initiatives, both from various ministries, to ensure that, especially this ministry of, not ministry, but an agency, which deals with empowerment, they are coming up with a lot of strategies, to ensure that especially the youth and women are being empowered. So because not everybody can get a job today. So what this government is doing is to open the space, so that people are empowered, to be able to take care of themselves.
Well, Senator, what do you think about this perspective? Because as the police presently constituted, yes, they've got a lot more capacity and capability, but they are still limited one way or the other. We've had different IGPs have said, look, we need to remove the amount of policemen we have with senators, with politicians is a lot. We see politicians and their convoy, retinue of security attached to them. They harass and manhandle people on the streets, drawing away from policing that should be policing the people. So can we ever get politicians? Because even if we restructure the policing structure, this challenge may still be with us. Can we ever get politicians to do the right things with security?
Why not?
But why are they not doing it till date?
Well, I think it is left for the Inspector General of Police. I remember during Buhari's time, such policemen were withdrawn, and they were asked to withdraw from, those such senators and those that do not deserve to have them. So I don't know if the law has been reversed or not, but I believe it's the Inspector General of Police that needs to do that, because if he feels he has inadequate personnel, then he should know that he has other personnel out there that are not supposed to be where they are. So I think it's him that needs to, do the needful and withdraw them from whoever does not deserve to have a policeman to secure him.
Another critical aspect is information. We know that no matter the boots on the ground, if they don't have information, they'll just be as good as nothing. We've seen former, even current army hierarchy always telling the populace, you need to volunteer information to us. But if they don't see you as one of them or that close to volunteer information to you, to be a problem. This brings us to the conduct of these security agencies. How close are they to the people? We've seen several scenarios today where people just don't volunteer information. Insurgency, for instance, they thrive on information from citizens. What do you think about how do we improve that?
I think that has to do with the security agencies and the federal government itself. There's need for an advocacy, on the citizens to ensure that they understand the role they have to play, in security. That is the most important thing, for the citizens to know they have a role to play, and they must be patriotic to this nation.
But isn't it a two-way thing? Because if security agencies don't conduct themselves and endear themselves to the people, if you keep brutalizing the people, how will they volunteer information to you?
I think the security agencies are doing their best. You may have one or two people that, their conduct may not be necessary.
Quite a number.
Yeah, well, some of them, not all of them, because the training we receive, I was a former military officer, I know the training I received, to be humble and to talk to citizens, especially when in an operational area, to win their hearts. We call it, winning the hearts and minds. That is very, very important for the security agencies to do. And I believe they are doing this. They are doing that.
All right. So we'll have to thank you for coming on this morning, and hope that we'll keep looking to see the kinds of improvements that are expected to be done and that will be done as things progress. Senator Abdulaziz Musa Yar'Adua, Chairman, Senate Committee on the Army, and also Chairman, Northern Senators Forum. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
All right, Business Morning on Sunrise City will.
Thank you so much for sticking to this video to the end. Like I said before, now it's time for us to go to the comment section to air our mind and our opinion. Say what you think about this video and this platform. Do it constructively. Share this video, like, subscribe, and also continue to watch Linda's TV show, because this is the home of news. Until I see you again in my next video, remain blessed. For now, I would say bye-bye.